histories of the people on this land and beyond. We also pause to recognize and acknowledge the labor upon which this country, state, and institutions are built. We remember that our country is built on the labor of enslaved people who were kidnapped and brought to the US from the African continent, and recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We also acknowledge all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples who contributed to the building of this country and continue to serve within our labor force. We acknowledge all unpaid caregiving labor. And to the people who contributed this immeasurable work and their descendants, we acknowledge our indelible mark on the space in which we gather today. It is our collective responsibility to critically interrogate these histories, to repair harm, and to honor, protect, and sustain this land. All power to the working and oppressed. And lastly, before we jump into the programming, I want to invite Ryder from SODA, Students for a Democratic Society, to give an introduction to Frank Chapman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, friends, students, and comrades. Thank you for joining us for this momentous occasion. The Progressive Student Union and MECA are proud to present author, activist, and lifelong revolutionary Frank Chapman. Frank Chapman began his career as an organizer in the People's Movement in the Missouri State Prison after being wrongfully convicted of murder and armed robbery in 1961. Chapman was sentenced to life and 50 years. There inside the prison walls is where he began to organize. In 1973, the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression took up Frank's case. In 1976, he was released after being incarcerated for 15 years. In 1983, he was elected executive director of the National Alliance, a role that still serves to this day. He worked alongside Charlene Mitchell, who preceded him as executive director, along with Angela Davis on building an international campaign to free those who falsely accused and politically persecuted. Frank Chapman is an author, activist, organizer, communist, and a leader in the struggle against police crimes. His books, The Damned Don't Cry and Marxist-Leninist Perspective on Black Liberation and Socialism, are both critical for organizers in a time where police killings and repression are the norm and struggle for justice and liberation is more important every day. While the US government continues to support and justify Israel's genocidal repression of the Palestinian people and students here attacked by our own administration and a brutal police state for speaking out, there's no option other than organized resistance. While the US does everything in its power to repress and divide, our task is to empower and unite the people. In addition to his role as executive director of the National Alliance, Chapman also serves as a field organizer and educational director of the Chicago Alliance Against Racial and Political Repression and on the Central Committee of Freedom Road Socialist Organization. We are honored and excited to be hosting a movement legend right here at University of Washington, Tacoma. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Frank Chapman.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Thank you for recognizing the indigenous people as the original stewards of this land. I very rarely hear that. Thank you for recognizing how the wealth in this country was created by slave labor. I hear that often because there's no mystery about why the United States is supporting a genocidal war being prosecuted by the state of Israel. Because given its own history, this country was born with the congenital bloodstain of slavery and genocide. That's just a historical fact, that's all. And now, they have to admit it because it can no longer be denied. But it don't mean nothing to them to admit it. It don't mean they're going to stop it. It don't mean that they're going to do away with racism. Don't mean none of that. They come up with constant new maneuvers and tactics and strategies to keep the oppressed and the rich white ruling class ruling. That's the nature of this beast. And I'm here to talk about it this evening in relationship to the question of Palestinian liberation and also Black liberation. We stand, and the we I'm talking about, I'm speaking on behalf not just of myself and my organization, NARPR or Frizzo. I'm speaking on behalf also of the oppressed Black people and brown people of this nation. Because when we talk about solidarity with the Palestinian liberation movement, we're not talking about, I say this all the time, we're not talking about an act of charity. We're not talking about moral support. We're talking about a solidarity that's based on mutual pain and suffering caused and perpetrated by the same enemy. We have to be clear on that. And that enemy in the world today is imperialism, fountainheaded by the United States and several other European countries like the United Kingdom and France and Germany and so on, The classical colonialist countries, the ones who were at the Berlin Conference back in 1883, those people, the ones who divided up Africa like it was a pig, the ones who occupied China and wouldn't allow the Chinese to walk in their own parks. Chinese and dogs were barred from the parks in their own country. So we know what they are capable of. There's a long history. Whether you're talking about the Portuguese, whether you're talking about the British, whether you're talking about the Germans, we know what they're capable of. They're capable of perpetrating these crimes of genocide and colonial occupation in every part of the globe. And even before they got to other parts of the globe, they did it to Ireland, didn't they? So we know what they're capable of. And so you don't have to be a very well-educated person to know these things. These are well-known historical facts. And it lies at the basis of our unconditional solidarity with the Palestinian people. I'm not going to give you an academic lecture about how this came about. I'm not an academic. I'm going to talk to you as an organizer, as a fellow organizer, as a fellow freedom fighter. We say we unconditionally support the Palestinian liberation movement, not only for all the reasons that I just outlined, but also because we want them to win. We want them to win because a victory for them is a victory for us. Nelson Mandela said that as long as the Palestinian people are oppressed, we all are. Their liberation is also our liberation. That's unconditional solidarity. And what that means is, just so people don't misinterpret what we're talking about here, what that means is we're not condemning any part, any section, by any stretch of the imagination of the Palestinian people who are rising up and fighting for their freedom. We can say that. A lot of people can't. If you're one of the people that can't say that, It's okay. You can still fight for a ceasefire. You can still fight against this genocidal war. But we fight in solidarity with the Palestinian people as partisans in this war. We're not neutral. We are not neutral. So when they ask us, well, don't you condemn Hamas? Look what they did. They cut people's heads off, they raped people, they did this, they did that. And what I say to them as a Black American, I said, well, from where I sit, it was a Nat Turner moment. Because those people were breaking out of a concentration camp. Those people were breaking out of a prison, which is the largest open-air prison in the world. Now, once you treat people like that, once you dehumanize people in that manner, who in the hell are you to say how they should revolt? Don't start getting moral on me all of a sudden, talking about terror and all that bull crap, because that don't mean nothing to me. If you've been terrorizing me and killing me for a century, it don't mean nothing. And when I kill you for a day, you start screaming and hollering about terror. You should have started hollering about terror back in 1948 when you expropriated 700,000 Palestinians. You should have started hollering about terror when you was going into Gaza almost on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, murdering people and killing people and calling it mowing the lawn. So this didn't start on October the 7th, people. This is not a fight for justice on the part of the Israelis. This is a fight of people who should know better because they were once themselves victims of the master race, the Herren folk of Germany. So they should know better. They should know exactly what they're doing because they're playing that master race role right now in Palestine. Yeah, they're racist. They're racist, straight up. White supremacists, Nazis, straight up. Perpetrators of apartheid, violators of international law. That's who they are. And see, this is no time to be mincing words. This is no time to be playing games, acting as if they're somebody that they're not. These people are just like the people that was one time ruling South Africa. They are fascists. They are fascists. And what they're perpetrating in Israel is fascism. And even some of the Israelis themselves admit that and say that. But let's don't talk about what the people who are fighting for justice in Israel are saying. Let's don't talk about what the Palestinians are saying. Let's talk about what they're saying. And what they're saying is the Palestinians are not human. Yeah, they said that. I heard them. You should have heard them too because they said it on international news. They said they were not human. They said that. They said they were going in there to exterminate them. They might have used a different word like ethnic cleansing or something like that, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So they weren't hiding their intentions. They said that they were going to kill Palestinians, period, because they said Hamas was using them as a human shield. So all them children that they murdered, all them people they murdered, going north of 35,000 right now, all the people that they have murdered, they're not taking any responsibility for it, even though the International Court has said you're responsible. Even though the vote in the United Nations over and over again is condemning them for war crimes. And only two nations only one nation really on the Security Council that consistently is on their side and consistently issues that veto vote to squash it, and that's the United States. They consistently do that. They make no bones about it. 35,000 dead, 86,000 injured, every hospital, every school, every mosque leveled to the ground. People on the verge of starvation. People are starving. Women are having their children born dead. All of this is going on. You're looking at it on TV every day. We were looking at it every day for a while. You know, they kind of took it off. But for the first 4 or 5 months, we was looking at that every day. And so if anybody is expressing any doubt to me about whether or not Israel is committing genocide, whether or not this war is a crime against humanity, I don't hear you. You're on the wrong side of history. You're not paying attention because that's what's really going on. And so the question for us is, what can we do to stop it? We have to support the liberation movement in Palestine unconditionally. We have to tell the United States government to cease and desist in all aid, all diplomatic, military, financial aid to the state of Israel. All of it. Don't give them nothing. Because the game that they're playing, we know what it is. They give them billions of dollars, and they take that billions of dollars and they use it to buy planes, tanks, bombs. Who do they buy that from? They buy that from the multinational corporations in the United States of North America. That's who they buy that from. Boeing and all them other people. So they're giving them the money, our tax dollars, to give to the corporations. That's a racket, ain't it? It's called the military-industrial complex. That's what they're doing. And the most amazing thing to me is they're doing it right before our eyes. They're not even hiding their hand. They're coming out boldly and openly saying what they're doing. The Democrats and the Republicans. Shame. But they ain't got that. That would work. Only if they had a conscience. They don't have no conscience. So that shit don't work on them. You know, what we have to do, we have to make it impossible for them to continue to perpetrate these crimes. We got to protest. We got to put people in the streets. And we got to shut shit down. And that's going to take not only the Palestinians and those of us who have been on their side all the time, it's also going to take the working class, it's going to take students, it's going to take churches, it's going to take everybody. Because shutting them down is part of shutting them down. On the university campuses, divest. That's part of the shutdown. In the streets, tie up the traffic, flood the shopping areas. No business as usual. We can conduct a war too, a war for peace in these streets with boycotts, with divestiture. We can do that. It's enough of us. We can do that. This is one of those moments where we have to organize the many against the few. The Zionists are not the many in the United States, they're the few. Those billionaires and millionaires and corrupt politicians who support them, they're the few. They are the few. They don't outnumber us. We overwhelmingly outnumber them. So we got to take and organize those of us who are the many so that we can shut this shit down, so that we can stop this war. It ain't gonna happen no other way. That's what we gotta be committed to doing. This doesn't mean that you just come out on one particular day and protest, and then you've done your due diligence. Nah. No, we gotta protest and disrupt. We gotta do that until we get results. And we gotta dismiss all of the bullshit that they're telling us. Like, for example, Biden saying, don't you invade Rafah. Time to draw the line. Is that real? No, because they're in there. They're invading it. What did they do when they invaded it? They said, don't invade it. They invaded it anyway. So they're playing games. They dropped tons and tons of bombs on Gaza. They dropped more bombs on Gaza. They dropped the explosive power of those bombs that they dropped on Gaza in total is greater, 2 times as great as the atom bomb that they dropped on Hiroshima, and 2 times as great as the atom bomb that they dropped on Nagasaki. Huh? That's what they've dropped on Gaza. 5 miles wide and 25 miles long. They got them people pinned up in there, murdering them like that. So we got to stop that. And we have the power to do that. We just got to organize it and give it some direction. You know, that's what we got to do. So are you with me? Are you hearing me? Yeah. That's what we got to do. Now, a little bit about myself in terms of how I came involved in this movement, but in relationship to the Palestinian question too. You know, we ain't gonna leave that. But it was mentioned, you know, there was a reference to it in the introduction that I became political while I was in prison, like many of us did back in the 60s, like Malcolm X, like George Jackson, like the Attica brothers, you know, the Soledad brothers, like many of us, because the 60s was a moment of political awakening in this country. And those of us who had been wrongfully convicted, those of us who had been victims of racist frame-ups, we woke up too. And we started fighting the system that did this to us. And see, the good thing about being a revolutionary or being a freedom fighter is that you can fight no matter where you're at. You can be in prison, you can be in slavery, in chains. No matter where you're at, you can fight. And that's the first thing you do right, is when you start to fight. And when you start that fight, you begin to become conscious about what you're doing. You begin to engage in fellowship, comradeship with those around you, and you join in together and you wage the struggle. We did that in prison. First, we was just the black prisoners doing it, and then we figured out how to unite the white prisoners with us. There was not just black prisoners that was rising up in the prison I was in, the Missouri State Penitentiary, which is reputed as being the bloodiest 47 acres in America. There was not just black prisoners in Attica that was rising up. All of the prisoners, black, brown, and white, were rising up. Because we learned this here, while under those horrible conditions, we learned that only the people united can get a victory. And we learned that those who were oppressing us and towering over us, that they could keep on doing that so long as they kept us divided, because they could pit one against the other, and we were giving our attention to each other instead of giving our attention to the enemy. That's just going on now. Like in Chicago, for example, we had 30,000 or so immigrants to come into the city that were sent there from the state of Texas by that reactionary fascist governor down there in Texas. And people start attacking the immigrants, start saying that we can't get no housing because of them. So that's what the oppressor does. Now here's a group of oppressed people seeking asylum. Here's a group of oppressed people that have already been here. And all of a sudden, they see the immigrant as the enemy. That's how they work us. So the same solution that we came up on in prison is the same solution here. We unite. We unite and we fight back, because that's the only way we can win. People united can never be defeated. We unite. We don't fall for that bull crap. We unite, And we did that when I was in prison. And things that they said was impossible, we made happen. We started a group called Lifers Incorporated, fighting back against the injustices that have been perpetrated against us. Every member, it was a dozen of us, every member of Lifers Incorporated got out. Every member. How did we do that? Because we connected ourselves with the movement outside, with Angela Davis and those movements outside, with the Black Panther Party, with the movement outside. We connected ourselves with those movements, and it was the movement that got us out. Wasn't nothing that we did all that extraordinary. We could have shut down the industrials in prison. We could have had food strikes and all that, and we did have that. But we could have been doing that for a while and never got out. But because we had the support of the movement on the outside, that's what got us out. I remember when they had the founding conference of the Alliance in Chicago, May 17, 1973, Angela and Charlene them told me, they said, "We're gonna bring you home, Frank." I said to myself, they crazy. I had life in 50 years, what they talking about? I ain't gonna get out of here no time soon. That was in 1973. In 1976, I came home because of the movement. Because of the movement. Because of the movement. And it is that movement, the National Alliance Against Race and Political Repression, which was founded in the wake of the victory for Angela Davis, the United Committees to Free Angela Davis and all political prisoners. We grew out of that movement. And so I am still involved in that movement today. And I wouldn't want that this movement got out. We have to get Geronimo Pratt out. We have to get the Rupa Ben Wahad out. I visited Rupa while he was in the New York prison. We have to get over 300 political prisoners out who were there as a result of being wrongfully convicted. And that's just in the state of Illinois. Okay. So we are a real movement that does real things. We have to get Joanne Little out. Joanne Little killed a prison guard who was trying to rape her. He came to rape her one time and she stabbed him to death with a makeshift, And they said, y'all can't beat that case. She killed a white prison guard. It's over. You're wasting your time. But we did. Johnny Monty Harris in Alabama, accused of rape. He didn't do the rape. They knew he didn't do it, but they gave him the death penalty because the rape victim was a white woman. Later on, she said he didn't rape her. He was on death row. I visited him on death row. He told me one time, Frank, these crackers, they're gonna kill me. I said, no, they ain't. We're gonna stop that. And sure enough, we brought Johnny Monty Harris home. So, and this ain't just me talking, you know, this is documented. The Wilmington 10, Reverend Ben Chavis and the Wilmington 10, all of them we got out. And it took a minute to get a pardon of innocence, but 47 years later, we got a pardon of innocence. This is the movement that I belong to. This is the movement that I've been belonging to for over 50 years. We celebrate our 51st anniversary, May the 17th of this year. Okay. And so I talk about these things in the book I wrote called The Damned Don't Cry. We documented it. I didn't start writing that book until I was in my 70s. I'm 81 now, going on 82. Born in 1942. I'm older than the state of Israel. So I'm just saying these things because I know what the movement can do. And you do too. So we don't give up hope. We don't get frustrated and give in to oppression. We fight till we die. We fight till we win. That's what we do. And we want you to join us. If you're not a part of us now, then be a part of us now. You know, ain't nothing between us but space. Come on over and join, you know. And united together, we can win this fight. All right? So that's just about my 30 minutes. They said there's gonna be some Q&A, so I'm gonna give time for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Another round of applause for Frank. So we're going to have a more open-ended general Q&A at the end. For this next section, we're going to focus the Q&A on the genocide in Palestine and just the general situation with Israel and Palestine. We're also opening up Q&A to Zoom on the camera right there. And do you have the Zoom questions here? Okay, you will raise your hand if there are. Please raise your hand if you've got any questions, comments, and yeah, we'll get this Q&A started. Okay, can you please introduce yourself if you're a member of an organization, and then share your question.
Hello, I'm Shanat Romo. I'm in SOTA SDS and FRSO. My question to you relating to how you just said that you're older than the state of Israel, I am really curious to know about your experiences like witnessing and being part of the fight against the oppressive genocidal state of Israel. I am very curious to know about like the history of activism for Palestinian liberation and what you've seen, what you've lived through and witnessed.
Yeah, I can do that. I have to summarize because we'd be here for another month. Ever since I've been alive, I told you I'm older than the state of Israel. But I remember in my experiences, not only as a Black freedom fighter, but in my experiences in the Black community, in the Black nation. I consider Black people an oppressed nation. All my life, all my political life for certain, I've seen this. I can attest to this, that every progressive and courageous freedom fighter in our movement, in the Black liberation movement, I'm talking about from 1948 all the way up till now, has stood with Palestine, not secretly, not hiding, openly. I'm talking about people like W.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, Malcolm X. In my lifetime, these are people that I have seen and come to know in my lifetime. Esther Jackson, editor of Freedom Ways magazine. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in 1967, they came out for Palestine, and because they came out for Palestine, the Zionist Jews cut their funding off, defunded them because they came out for Palestine. Has it been 100%? No. No. Bayard Rustin, who also comes out of the civil rights movement, put out a full-page ad in the New York Times supporting Israel. Supporting Israel. But like I said, every progressive, I don't consider him progressive. I don't consider Vernon Jordan of the Urban League progressive. You know, I don't consider Dr. Ralph Bunchy, who was a Black ambassador to the United Nations. I don't consider them progressive. But there was a progressive that went to the United Nations, who was with Dr. King. He wasn't radical, but he was progressive, and his name was Andy Young. He quit the United Nations over Palestine. Yeah, he did. Reverend Joseph Lowry, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a successor of Dr. King, went to Palestine, met with Arafat, came out supporting it. But the one that I remember most of all is Reverend Wyatt T. Walker out of Harlem. Reverend Wyatt T. Walker went to Palestine and he visited one of the refugee camps. And he said what he saw in Palestine, and I don't use that N-word often, but I'm gonna quote him for what he really said. What he said, what he saw in Palestine was the niggers of the Middle East. And why did he say that? Because he came out of one of the largest ghettos in the United States, Harlem. And he saw some shit in Palestine in terms of the refugee camps, worse than what he saw in Harlem. So that's why I said, we ain't just talking in the air here. You know, this is not about some abstract moral support. We know the suffering that we see, and we can identify with it. We can identify and relate. And so that's been the Black liberation movement in relationship to Palestine since 1948. And I just documented it for you in a few words. You know, there's a book out on Black power in Palestine. Read it. I forget the author, but it just came out. So, but I'm not talking about no book. I'm talking about what I experienced in my life. Time, what I saw. When I used to go get a haircut in the barbershops, I would hear this. You know, there's a long history and tradition of support for the Palestinian liberation movement in the Black community. Don't let nobody tell you otherwise. Now, more recently, in Ferguson, Missouri, Palestinians on the streets fighting with us shoulder to shoulder. I was down there. We took a busload of folks down there from Chicago when they murdered Michael Brown. Yeah. And every time we have demonstrated in Chicago around the Laquan McDonald case where we put thousands in the streets, during the George Floyd uprising where we put tens of thousands in the streets, the Palestinians have been right there with us, shoulder to shoulder. So I ain't making this shit up. This is real. You know, we have experienced real solidarity in the streets. Our people have been over to Palestine and seen with their eyes what's going on, have united with the Palestinian people. And, you know, we stand united with them, they stand united with us. USPCN, U.S. Palestinian Community Network, is an affiliate organization of the National Alliance Against Race and Political Repression. We sit at the same table. We got the same appetite. All right? Answer your question. Glad it was helpful.
Zoom.
I ain't gonna be that long on all of them now, but that was a good question.
We got a couple questions from Zoom. The first one is from Yesenia Searcy, and their question is, I am a student at UWT. My question is, what do you think labor unions should be doing in this fight for Palestine?
Not loading ships. Or to Palestine. Not flying planes. Having solidarity strikes. But right now, what labor has done, like the UAW, they came out for a ceasefire. Don't let the UAW be alone in that. All of the unions need to come out for a ceasefire. But I remember doing the fight against apartheid in South Africa, the International Longshoremen and Warehouse Workers Union in the Bay Area and in New Orleans in Louisiana. Ships going to South Africa, they refused to load them. They wouldn't put nothing on those ships. We need that kind of action too.
Okay, before we go back to Zoom, I've got one here. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Sean. I'm a founder in a permanent real estate cooperative called the Kitsap Permanent Real Estate Cooperative. The idea is to start using direct action to win land back for the tribes who've been oppressed and destroyed throughout the history of the United States of America. And as a member of one of those tribes, I'd kind of like you to go a little bit more into how folks who claim to be allies can unconditionally support movements like the one in Palestine or the tribal movements here. Because something I often hear from folks who tend to have benefited from the stolen land and stolen labor is, oh, we got to be nice to the police. We got to be nice to the president. We don't want to upset people. We don't want to rock the boat. And I think that's a very privileged statement for people to make. Like, oh, the oppressor's here. Let's make sure he's comfortable. I'd kind of like you to go a little bit more into this unconditional support and explain it for some of us, because I think it's a thing that's missing from a lot of people in the United States, how to really unconditionally support oppressed people.
Yeah, our organization historically has supported Leonard Peltier of the Oglala Sioux, who's probably the longest held political prisoner in the United States. His wife, Stephanie Peltier, was a member of our national board. So we're not just talking. We have stood in solidarity with indigenous people in this country, and it's unconditional for us as well. We don't, everything you said, I support. But let me go a step further. When we say we unconditionally support, whether it's the Palestinians, whether it's the indigenous people, whether it's the Filipinos, whether it's the South Africans. When we say real conditional support, that means by whatever means of struggle you choose to fight, we support that. By whatever means, we're not telling you how you should fight. You know, that's not our business. Our business is to give you support when you do fight. That's our business. Our business is not to tell you, well, you should rebel this way, you should fight this way. That's an internal matter for your movement and for your people. It's not our business to tell you. When you come to us and ask us for support, that's what we should give. It shouldn't be conditional. It shouldn't be, well, we will support you if you be nonviolent. We will support you if you do it this way or do it that way. No, you do it the way you do it. You do it the way you do it. We support you. We support you. Just like we support the Palestinians when they told us, well, what about Hamas? What about Hamas? Well, they killed her. You've been killing them since 1917. So what the hell are you talking about? No, I think you might have earned that. I think you might have earned it. And with the indigenous people of this country, I know damn well they earned it. Because there has been an extermination program from the islands in the Caribbean, from Tierra del Fuego, the tip of South America, all the way to the North Pole. They've carried out a program of colonization and extermination, mainly extermination because they were after the land. So when you're after the land, sometimes that's the program. The program is exterminate the occupiers of the land. And we have seen that program carried out over and over again against the indigenous people of this country. So hell yeah, we support you in whatever you do for your liberation and your freedom. Unconditionally. We ain't putting no conditions on it. Act bad as you want them. We support you, period. That's our duty and our responsibility as fellow freedom fighters, because we're fighting the same enemy you're fighting. That answer your question? No problem.
Okay, I saw another on Zoom here.
Okay, so the next question from Zoom is from John Searcy, and he goes, my name is John Searcy. Thank you for your contributions, brother. Do you see any emerging coalitions building enough solidarity today to not be as easily infiltrated by strategic divisions of the oppressors that have been able to put pressure on the U.S. to cease and desist financial support of Israel? Does that make sense? So do you see any emerging coalitions building today or building enough solidarity today to not be easily infiltrated by strategic divisions of the oppressor?
I think I understand the question. Is infiltration going on from the oppressor?
And do you see any coalitions today that are strong enough to not be easily infiltrated and also strong enough to put pressure on the U.S. to cease and desist financial support of Israel?
Yeah, the one we got. That's easy to answer that. That's my experience. We got that coalition with the Palestinian people. Directly. We ain't playing. Yeah, we got that coalition. Yeah. And let me just say something else on that. The way you deal with infiltration and all of that is that you stick to the program of solidarity. You stick to the program of supporting unconditionally the revolutionary movement in Palestine. You stick to that. And when the enemy come in talking some other kind of bull crap, you refute that. Not with just words, but with deeds. Get out of here. You know, this ain't the place for you. we don't want you here. We're not neutral. We're partisan. So if you're going along with the enemy in any way, shape, form, or fashion, get the hell away from us. And mean it. Carry that out to the letter. It's going to be uncomfortable for some people because they say we're being extreme. Well, war is extreme. What's going on in Gaza right now as we talk is extreme. Every 18 minutes, a child is being murdered. That's pretty goddamn extreme. So ain't no time to play no games here. That's my answer.
Okay, I think this will be our last question on this subject. And then at the end of the program, we will have a more general Q&A to discuss whatever y'all want to talk about. But this will be our last on Palestine before moving on. Let's hear it anyway.
Transition.
Hello, my name is Claudia. I'm part of Kabataan Alliance, which is a Filipino youth alliance across the United States. And my question is related to something what you just shared about people that like basically are like on the opposite like spectrum or like opposite end of and so my question is, what importance do you see in bringing in the people that have maybe backwards ideas, and what importance do you see in uniting those people to come, especially thinking like for me, it's really important to unite the broadest masses as most possible, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, could you repeat the question to me because no.
So you talked about sending the backwards away from us. We don't want anything to do with them. That's
Infiltrators, not the backwards.
okay. So for
Infiltrators.
infiltrators, Claudia's question was, when we're trying to build movements which as broad masses as possible, what do you think about trying to bring the backwards in?
I think we should. I wasn't talking about that. The question that was asked me was about infiltrators. Ain't that the question? Police agents. People working to undermine our movement. People trying to confuse us and derail us. I was talking about them. We can't have a wishy-washy policy with regard to them. But somebody, you said backward, or somebody that needs to be educated, somebody who's not familiar with the issue, those masses that we need to be organizing, patience, good agitation, good propaganda. Talk to them as much as we need to talk to them. Don't drive them away, bring them in. And the best way to bring them in is to get them engaged in what we're doing. Because what teaches better than anything else is practice. We believe in practicing your way into correct thinking. So the best thing to do is to get them engaged, win them over. And with regard to our people, oppressed people, that's not as hard as a lot of people make it out to be, because they can identify and relate to the suffering. But no, I hear what you're saying, comrade. No, we want to bring in the masses. We want to win over as many people as we can. We can't win this fight no other kind of way. We definitely don't want to turn people away who we know we could win over. We want to turn agent provocateurs away. We want to turn people who are working for the police away. People who come in trying to undermine what we're doing. That's what I meant. Thank you for the question. It was a good question.
So now we're going to hear a little bit about the upcoming march on the Democratic National Convention in August before moving on to talk about the student movement and student repression.
Well, on August the 29th, let me talk about who's doing this. The National Alliance Against Racism and Repression, the U.S. Palestinian Community Network, Students for a Democratic Society, and FRIZZO are some of the core key organizations that's organizing this, but not the only ones. We are working with more than 100 different organizations and groups. And what's the program here? The program is to have a national march, demonstration, protest in Chicago on August 19th at the Democratic National Convention to let Genocide Joe and his colleagues, the Democratic Party, know that we want an end to this genocidal war, period. No more. Stop. Cease and desist. And we also are joining in with other progressive forces in the women's movement, the LGBTQ community, the Black community, the Chicano community, the immigrants. We're also joining in with them so that their demands can also be put on the table. But at the top of the list, the headline, so to speak, is in the genocidal war in Gaza. That's got to be the headline. That's got to be the headline. Because if we don't stop that, we're all in trouble. We're in trouble already. But we're not in more trouble than they're in because they're going to lose this and we're going to win it. But we're trying to cut the costs. Enough of the killing already, you know. And while I'm on this, let me just say one thing. All the bombs that they've dropped, all the senseless murder and the social savagery that they have heaped upon the Palestinian people, they have not killed the resistance because you can't kill a revolution.
So I encourage everybody here to check out marchonthednc2024.org. Anybody wearing the red shirts, raise your hands. Yeah, feel free to come talk to us about joining this coalition. We got to take it to Biden. We got to take it to the Democrats. They are in power. They have the power to stop this. And when we show our people power, we can force their hand.
Yeah.
So to move into the next our program, we're going to talk a little bit about student organizing and talk a little bit about the specific repression that we've seen in our city here in Tacoma. So I'm going to give a quick briefing for those who aren't aware. At the University of Puget Sound, just up the hill here, there is a student organization, Students for a Democratic Society, one chapter of the national organization, who have been organizing for Palestine. On February 21st, Derek Kilmer, Derek Kilmer was scheduled to give a lecture at the University of Puget Sound. Who here knows who Derek Kilmer is? Unfortunately, yeah. Who here knows who Derek Kilmer's #1 campaign contributor is, who his #1 donor is? And what's that? What's that, Gloria? They're the Zionist lobby is who they are. Okay. Yeah, boo. This guy's #1 donor is the Zionist lobby. He takes money from them and he passes laws condemning pro-Palestine protests. He passes laws saying that to protest the Zionist occupation is anti-Semitic. He is a dog of the Zionists, plain and simple. So the students at the University of Puget Sound saw that their university was bringing Derek Kilmer to campus. And first, they ran a petition. They got hundreds of students, faculty, and alumni to sign this petition saying, cancel Derek Kilmer's talk. What did the university do? They went through with it anyway, and they called the Tacoma Police Department to be there and watch the student protesters. But the students, they're strong. The student movement in this country is very strong. And they gathered hundreds of protesters outside where Derek Kilmer was supposed to talk. They marched inside, they took to the stage, and they shut it down. Derek Kilmer did not give his talk. He did not give his lecture, and many students got their first taste of direct action in directly stopping a Zionist politician from speaking on campus. Right? A great victory. But how has the university responded? The university ran this bullcrap investigation. They hired lawyers to investigate the student protesters, and recently they came out with their findings. Krishna, the founder of Puget Sound SDS, is banned from playing tennis. She got kicked off their tennis team. She had her study abroad trip, which she already put a down payment on in cash out of her own pocket. They canceled it. She's not allowed to study abroad. In addition to this personal retribution against Krishna, the entire organization of Students for a Democratic Society is banned from flyering on campus. They're banned from speaking on campus. They're banned from meeting or gathering on campus until 2026. And the university said this club is no longer allowed to use the words Puget Sound in their logo, in their name. It is clear violations of free speech. So there were some prepared questions ahead of time. I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and ask. Given what we've seen in the student movement nationally, internationally, and locally here in Tacoma, how can students fight repression from their administration?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, I mean,
Protests. I think that here's our experience. Whatever period of history you want to go to, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. Here's our experience. Our experience in terms of the student movement is every time the students organize and protest on campus, there's repression. Sometimes brutal and savage, sometimes not so brutal and savage, but repression still. You know, during the 60s, they murdered students, both at Jackson State and Kent State, black and white students. They murdered them for protesting. So now what we're seeing in New York and what we're seeing here in Washington And throughout the country, we're seeing the police being used to repress students. We're seeing administrations, college administrations, university administrations using anti-Semitism and bogus violence, claims of violence as excuses for repressing student protests. They know that these protests are nonviolent. They know that the students are exercising their unalienable democratic right to protest, even protected by the Constitution. They know all this. So they create these boogeymen, you know, to make it look like it's something that it ain't, so that they can come in there with their police tactics and squash it. Or designers come out with their clubs, with their disruption, and create a scene, and the police come in not to stop the Zionists, not to stop the violence, but to perpetrate it. So we know what's going on. You know, we know what they're doing. So we have to organize against this. We have to organize against this. We have to be prepared to help students get out of jail when they, like we've done in Chicago, when they arrested students and took students to jail. We had jail support. You know, they arrested the students. We took the protests from the campus grounds where the students was arrested right in front of the police station. We stayed out in front of those stations until they let those students out. We got legal support. You know, this is part of the fight. This is what you have to do. You know, if they try to racially frame you up, not racially frame you up, but if they try to frame you up like they did the Tampa 5, then we organize campaigns, not just in Washington, not just in Tacoma, but throughout the country, you know, to stop that repression. And when we've organized these campaigns like we did in the Tampa 5, we have been victorious. We have stopped the prosecution. We have stopped them from doing what they're doing. But with these encampments, it's a kind of a different struggle. With these encampments, you have to have a support group ready and on point, ready to go, so that whenever they grab a student and take them and lock them up or beat them or brutalize them, the support team goes into action, you know, to get them out. And what are we getting them out for? So they can protest again. We're not getting them out and then saying, okay, bye, get out of here. No. Let's go back and protest some more. We are not going to accept repression. We're going to fight it. And I'm just saying some general things here. You will learn how to fight it in particular by fighting it. So just prepare yourself. Just prepare yourself for a fight. Don't think that because the police didn't show up the first day, because they didn't show up the second day, they may not even show up for a whole week, but they're gonna show up. They're coming. So prepare yourselves. They're coming. You know, when students protest, if the administration may not clamp down on you, they may not try to expel you or do this, that, and the other at that particular moment, at that particular time. It may not be advantageous for them to do it at that moment. But as soon as they get to the point where they start using that word unacceptable, which they got from Biden, right? Unacceptable. Attack against the Jews, unacceptable. Ain't no attack against the Jews, it's attacks against the Zionists. And it ain't no attacks against the Zionists on no individual level. It's an attack against the Zionist state of Israel. You know, And there's some Jews that stand side by side with us on this. So if they haven't got you, blacklisted or whitelisted, then that's because they ain't got around to it yet. They're gonna do it. They coming with the repression. Okay, I hope I didn't catch nothing. They're coming with the repression, and so be prepared. That's the best advice I can give.
Thank you. And what message would you send to the president, Isaiah Crawford of the University of Puget Sound, and the rest of the University of Puget Sound administration? What message would you send them?
What message would I send to who?
Administration, the university president, the ones who've done this repression to the students.
In the repression, respect the democratic rights of the students to protest and to organize. Respect that.
And we're about to open it up for one final round of Q&A. But before we do, I'm going to add in one more question because I know that sadly, some of the students from the University of Puget Sound who are facing this repression couldn't be here due to illness, but I suspect some of them are watching on Zoom. So what message would you send to Krishna and Lauren and the students at the University of Puget Sound?
For these students that have been repressed, courage, comrades. You're not alone. And we really mean that. The movement stands behind you 1,000%, and we'll turn back this repression. The people united will never be defeated. So take courage.
All right, we are right on time for our programming. This is very exciting for me. So we are going to now just open it up to any general questions about, Frank, his life, the Black Liberation Movement, Palestine, whatever you see. I already see a couple of hands. I'm going to go back to front. I'm going to get to you next, but start right here. Please introduce yourself if you're a member of an organization and ask your question.
So my name is Naki, Black Seminole Comedican. I was Minister of Defense of the previous chapter of Tacoma, Seattle, chapter of Black Panthers. I want to give respect to the OG. It's good to hear your story. It's good to hear an elder that survived through the past things you've been through. I wanted to say something about Israel and Palestine because I've been into what's going on since 1997, and people are saying like ceasefire a lot, but ceasefire is not really going to work because as long as the state of Israel exists, Palestine is never going to be free, ever, while the state of Israel exists. So that doesn't mean like everybody in the state of Israel needs to not be alive anymore. It just means they need to go back to Europe and Canada and America where they came from and where they belong. And like 600,000 of them have already done. And then also, there's a lot of stuff militarily going on that's not being broadcast to the American media, of course, because it's controlled by the Israelis. So there's on YouTube, there's something called Hindustan Times and like the Times of India, but they're putting out what's actually going on the ground. And on the ground, they're being attacked by like 6 different armies at the same time. They're being attacked from Hezbollah in the north, and militants in Iraq in the west, and Bahrain is launching missiles, and the Houthis are also launching missiles, and Al-Qassam is also attacking them all at the same time. So they're actually the Israeli army is actually getting kind of messed up, actually, in the actual war is what actually is going on. But they're never going to tell you that on TV until I don't know when, because they control that. So if you guys want to know like what's actually going on, Times of India or Hindustan Times on YouTube. So
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's. Anything to add to that, Frank? You got a question?
Yeah. Overnight X, Chief of Staff, Black Panther Party. First off, all power to the students. Secondly, what's next? What do we do next? I feel that direct action has always been the most effective. And so I don't really know how to word that any better. Just what's next? And your recommendation.
Well, I recommend that those of you in this, if you're talking about what's next in Washington, you ought to know. Don't expect me to come in there and tell you, this is your fight. So, don't. What next person is the person that can be in? If you're engaged in action, then you should always be doing what's next. United States as a whole. It's always meant. It's always meant. How do you continue to organize and mobilize the people? How do you continue to raise hell? Until we get justice, struggle is what's meant. Until we get justice, it's at least I continue. The struggle continues. Because I want to make sure, that's a very important question. Thank you for the question.
Okay, was there a question on Zoom or just a comment about? Okay.
So this question is actually coming from the live stream from Instagram. So I have Claire who says, there are a ton of students at UPS who are very ambivalent about Palestine, or they say they support Palestine, but they don't show up to rallies and actions. What should we as members of SDS be doing to reach those people? I feel like they don't understand the purpose of actions and rallies. Oh, I feel like they don't understand that the purpose of actions and rallies is to show up to them.
Well, organizing is very challenging. We used to say you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So why do you keep bringing him? The reason why you keep bringing him is because he might get thirsty. You don't stop trying to organize people because they don't respond the first time you go out. You keep agitating. You keep propagandizing. An agitator never stops agitating. An agitator never stops agitating. People may not be responding right now, but you keep on agitating. You keep on working with those people until you get them to respond. I guarantee you that your work is not in vain, because, like Marcus Garvey said, when all else fails, conditions will organize the people. And this ain't magic, comrades. The conditions are not going to just automatically change. We got to change them. That's right. And we got to change them with those very people who you're saying are not coming out. You got to work. You got to organize. You got to agitate. You got to participate until you get them out. You know, you can't say they're not, and you can't blame them. You just have to do a better job of organizing. Because you can't hold at fault and blame the very people that you're trying to organize. I'm not trying to put down what you said. I'm just trying to get you to understand, based on my experience, what organizing is really all about. It's never about blaming the oppressed. It's never about blaming the people that you're trying to organize, that they're too stupid or too uninterested or too unenthused to get involved in what we're doing. No, you can't organize that way. You know, you have to keep agitating. I used to do, I was in the trade union movement. When we were trying to organize nursing homes, I would be there every morning at 5 o'clock. The workers would get there at 6. But I'd be there every morning at 5, every working day morning, with union literature and available to talk to the workers. The first several weeks out, nobody talked to me. But they saw I kept showing up at the same time. And finally, somebody stopped and said, what you got there? It's got to be something to this. This guy keeps coming up here, you know. You got to keep showing up for the very people that you're saying are not interested. You got to keep showing up for them. And they will get interested. Because organizing is about consistency, and it's about focus. So if you're focused and you're consistent, you're going to get a response. People who are young in this movement and people who are new to this movement often make this complaint. Folks are just not interested. How is it that you're going to be getting flack every day from this system and you're not interested? You just haven't touched the right button yet. Keep on trying, comrade. Keep on struggling with them, and you'll get a response. Don't give up.
So just a brief announcement. I saw at least one more hand. People be thinking about your questions. Okay, another hand here. Brief announcement before I move to this question. There are books available here. Pamphlets are $2. The books themselves are $15. I myself have read Marxist-Leninist Perspectives on Black Liberation and Socialism. That is a good read. This man is a good author, so I highly recommend you check out those books. Who had the questions? I saw at least one here. I'm going to start up at the one that's closer to me, and then, okay, at least 3 more. So we're going to try and move through these. All right.
Hello, my name is Amira. I guess it's not just a question for you. It's a question for everyone. Like, how do we continue to work for the oppressor and continue to give these tax dollars that they are using to continue or portray this genocide that is going on and multiple genocides that are going on? How do we continue to be a part of the system that is providing them the money to be able to do these things. Because from what it looks like they are powered by money and they are powered by the economy and us who work for them and power their corporations. So like, I don't know, like what's next there? Like how do we successfully like come together and create a new community and a new system that sustainably and fully helps everyone to have all access to all the resources that they need, while also not feeding into the oppressor anymore?
Mhm. That's a question for everybody. That me and everybody includes me. Okay. Um, the only way to get out of oppression is to overthrow the system that's oppressing you. This ain't magic. And who's going to have to do that? You're going to have to do that. We're going to have to do that. So we're going to have to unite as a people, as a class, as a nation. We're going to unite as a people to get rid of this system. On me. I ain't into compares. Well, let's forget about it. There's no other way to do this. You know, you got to deal with the system that's denying you your rights as a human being to exist. You got to deal with that. You got to get the foot off your neck. And if the foot is not going to voluntarily move off your neck, that means you got to take it off your neck by whatever means necessary. This is a long, protracted process. A lot of education is going to take place in this process. But the best education that we get on this is by engaging ourselves into the struggle on a daily basis. Every time you fight for justice, every time you organize a protest, you're learning how to deliver a blow against this system. And so you keep on doing it, you know, and you keep on working with other people and doing it. And eventually we get to where we're trying to go. It's a protracted process. It not only can it take years, decades, it can take centuries. People don't realize that, you know, oppressed people have been struggling for centuries. Not for a week, not for a month, but the struggle continues in a progressive direction. We gain more. We may not get all that we fight for in a particular moment, but we have to fight for all we get. We have to fight for all we get. Ain't nothing given. So, you know, we keep it up. We keep the struggle up. We keep going. We keep fighting, you know. And the answers come only when you fight. You know, the answers come. The answers come. The first thing you do right is when you start the fight. That didn't answer your question in particular, because there is no particular answer. That's the general answer. You know, like Bob Marley said, stand up and fight, you know, for your rights. Don't give up the fight is what he said, right? Don't give up the fight. Stand up for your rights. Don't give up the fight. That's a continuous process, as long as we've been oppressed.
I saw a hand back here. Is that right? Okay, let me bring you the microphone.
Hello, my name is Cleo. I am an organizer with the Fremont Socialist Organization, and I'm a union organizer. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the struggle in Chicago for justice for victims of police violence, and in particular, the struggle for community control of the police. Just to highlight the local struggle and how this city and Tacoma has been denied justice. I'll just briefly say that Manny Ellis was a 33-year-old Black man who was killed by the Tacoma Police Department in March of 2020. He had 6 officers on top of him. He told them that he could not breathe, and they killed him. And just recently, in December, all 3 officers, after a criminal trial, were found not guilty. So I am wondering if you could talk about what the struggles looked like in Chicago, why you use the demand of community control of the police, and how that is a revolutionary demand, and maybe one that could be brought to Tacoma or all over the country.
Sure. The struggle in Chicago around the issue of police crimes and community control of the police has been going on in one form or another since 1969, when Fred Hampton was murdered. He is the one who started the movement for community control of the police. It's called the CCOP, CCOP, back in 1969. So how many years is that? It's over 50, right? So this is a long struggle in Chicago. It's a long struggle in this nation. But it arose out of the struggle of the Black Panther Party to stop the police repression and murder against that party. And they said that until the Black community gets control of the police, they will be occupied by the police, because the police operates as a paramilitary organization in the Black community. So this is a demand, a fundamental demand that came out of the Black Liberation Movement, even before the Panther Party. If you read the 1950 edition of the Mohammed Speaks that was put out by the Nation of Islam, 1950, that was one of the demands. One of the demands. So this is a demand that come out of the Black Liberation Movement years and years ago. And we can trace it, in fact, all the way back to the end of the Civil War and Black Reconstruction. And the reason why it's been a continuous demand in the Black community is because the Black community has been continuously occupied by the police. The police has always served the same function. They're the descendants of the slave catchers and the overseers. That's who they are, And so we understand that. They occupy our communities. We understand that. They treat us like we are hostiles, and they act like they are an army to control us when they can, exterminate us when they can't. And that's a hell of an obstacle to the Black Liberation Movement. So we have to deal with that obstacle. We can't ignore that. So that's a political understanding as to where the slogan, community control of the police, comes from, where the demand comes from. It's a political demand. It's not a reform demand, because the Black Liberation Movement is not a reform movement. The Black Liberation Movement is a revolutionary movement, has been ever since it's been in this country. And I talk about that in my book, Black Liberation Socialism, that the Black Liberation Movement is a revolutionary movement, And so some of the demands that come out of the Black Liberation Movement are revolutionary demands, revolutionary democratic demands. So we're demanding that we have the right to say who polices our communities and how our communities are policed. That's not the same thing as saying abolish the police. That's not the same thing as saying defund the police. Because whether you realize it or not, you're asking the city government, the state government, and the federal government to do what they will never do. They ain't never gonna defund the police. The police is an agent of their oppression. Why would they do that? So that's not a democratic demand. That's a foolish demand. That's a demand that doesn't face reality. The reality is we need to have control over who polices our community and how our communities are policed. That's the only pathway to justice for us. And so that's what we fight for. That's what we're fighting for in Chicago. Now, the reason why the comrade asked me to talk about this in relationship to Chicago is because we achieved a significant victory around this question in Chicago. For the first time in the history of this country, we were able to get the City Council of Chicago, which is 1/3 black, 1/3 brown, and 1/3 white. We were able to unite the black and brown of the City Council and get them to pass an ordinance empowering communities for public safety. Yeah. We were able to do that. And we did that 1 year after the George Floyd rebellion. That rebellion that put 25 million people in the streets, that was the fuel for our fire. We did that in the wake of the George Floyd rebellion. But that's just a little pinch of power. So last year, February 28th of last year, we had an election in all 22 police districts to elect 3 representatives from each district who will be responsible for what we're saying, holding the police accountable for what they do and what they don't do in our communities. And these 26 districts would also nominate 7 people citywide to sit on a citywide commission for public safety and accountability. Public safety and accountability that would have the authority to shape police policy. We did that. We created that February 28th of last year. We mobilized 230,000 voters. Our movement did that. The FOP put out money to try to defeat us. But we won 15 districts out of 22. The FOP weren't able to put their puppets in there and control the situation. So we won. We won. And immediately, once we got our commission set up, it ain't over. We still fighting. But we eliminated the gang database as soon as we got it set up. We now are working on stop and frisk, internet bullshit, you know. But we're beginning to initiate policies which change the policing in our community, where we will have the say, where we will determine what it's like. Recently, we conducted a struggle to get all of those racist cops that belong to the Proud Boys and all that bullshit, to get them off the police force. We ain't won that struggle yet, but we did initiate it. And we're going to initiate other struggles. And it's going to take some time, but we're going to win. We're going to win. It's going to take some time. But we have already begun the process that we've been talking about for years, comrades. We've already begun the process of holding the police accountable for what they do and don't do in our communities. We already have begun the process to teach the masses that there is a road, there is a pathway to community control of the police. But we got to make that road happen. We got to fight for it. We got to fight for it. We can't just beg for it. We can't just ask the powers that be, would you please defund the police? Would you please just go out of existence and don't be no more? See, that ain't never happened. Frederick Douglass told us about that. Power concedes nothing without a demand and a struggle. So we didn't told you what the demand is and what the struggle is and how we're going about making it happen. And so now it's about us building our movement. How do we mobilize 230,000 voters? By going out in the community, tabling, door knocking, canvassing every day. We did that for 10 years. This shit didn't happen overnight. We've been base building. You know, so we learned something from the failures of the Panther Party. We learned something from our failures. We ain't trying to glorify mistakes. We learn from our failures. And so based on that political education, we're going forward. So did that answer your question? You're not even listening. Did that answer your question? I'm glad it did. Did you hear the answer?
All right. So before we close, I just want to let people to know that at the same time tomorrow at Common Good Collective, we're going to be having another conversation with Frank Chapman, with a little bit shifted focused on revolutionary organization. And yeah, I want to thank everybody so much for coming out. You all brought so much. Yeah. I want to thank Synth for their tireless efforts to make this event happen. If you are a student here at UW Tacoma, please sign up on Synth's interest form for the Progressive Student Union. As I said, there's books here. And as Frank said, a big part of what's next is the education. So I can highly recommend Frank Chapman's writings. We've got those over here. We're gonna close for the evening. We'll see some of you around tomorrow night at Common Good. Oh, and I'm getting a prompt from Claudia for a group photo. I think that's a great idea. Why don't everybody come up to the front here? Let's gather around Frank. Let's get a good group photo.
Come on, y'all. Come on over here. Oh, come on over. Glad to see some black revolutionaries up in there. Watch it now, watch it now, watch it now. Fist up.
Left fist.
All right. Okay.
That's a good problem.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
I said all power to the people.
All power to the people.
Yeah, you've got the power. You look at it.
All right.
And let's do one more round of applause for Frank Chapman here.
Yeah, met him in 1959. He kept me from going to Vietnam. Really? Yeah, really.
Talk to me when you go to Vietnam. You met Fred Hampton too?
No, I didn't meet Fred Hampton. I met his brother, Bill. When I came home out of prison, Fred was dead. They murdered Fred. I know his son very well.
You live in Chicago right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chicago super crazy.
Yeah, it's super crazy, and we super militant. You know? Yeah, it's definitely super crazy.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Yeah, it's super crazy. But that's why we fighting them cops. It's super crazy, but it ain't just got like that in Chicago. It's been like that.
I thought a while ago that they called the cops off and there was no cops in Chicago or something like that.
No,
Is that
shit.
true?
That's
what they said on the
No, it's bullshit. They in Chicago acting buck wild.
yeah.
No, it's a real struggle going on between us and the police, and we're gaining some ground.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what's up.
we're gaining some ground.